In the current supplement landscape, niacin and NMN are discussed primarily in the context of NED plus and longevity. But there's a clinically important capability that niacin possesses, one that NR and NMN simply do not share, and it has nothing to do with cellular aging. At therapeutic doses, niacin is one of the most effective naturally occurring compounds for modifying blood lipid profiles. This is not a fringe claim. It is documented across decades of cardiovascular research. Niacin at doses between 1 and 3 grams per day reduces LDL cholesterol by 10 to 20%, lowers triglycerides substantially, and, perhaps most impressively, raises HDL cholesterol by 15 to 35%. That HDL effect is particularly significant because HDL elevation is notoriously difficult to achieve pharmacologically. Statins, the first-line drugs for cholesterol management, do very little for HDL. Niacin does a great deal. For someone managing both aging concerns and cardiovascular risk simultaneously, niacin offers a 2-for-1 proposition that NR and NMN cannot approach. NR and NMN show no meaningful lipid-modifying effects at the doses studied. This isn't a gap in the research that future trials might fill. It reflects the mechanistic reality that lipid modulation via niacin operates through receptor pathways and hepatic processes that NMN's metabolic route simply doesn't engage in the same way. You cannot get niacin's cardiovascular benefits from NMN, regardless of dose. Here's where the analysis requires nuance and honesty, because niacin's cardiovascular story is genuinely complicated. The AMHI and HPS2 THRIVE trials, large randomized controlled trials conducted in the late 2000s and early 2010s, showed that adding niacin to statin therapy did not produce additional cardiovascular event reduction. These trials dealt significant damage to niacin's clinical reputation and led to reduced prescribing by cardiologists. However, both trials had meaningful design limitations. They tested niacin as an addition to already optimized statin therapy, not as standalone treatment. They enrolled patients whose LDL was already well controlled by statins, leaving little room for niacin to demonstrate incremental benefit. The question they answered, does niacin help people whose cholesterol is already managed by statins, is a different question from whether niacin is effective as primary lipid therapy in statin-naive patients. The baby was thrown out with the bathwater. Monotherapy trials of niacin, conducted before the statin era, demonstrated real cardiovascular mortality benefits. For individuals who cannot tolerate statins or who need HDL elevation that statins don't provide, niacin remains a clinically meaningful option. Any honest comparison of niacin against NMN must acknowledge that niacin carries cardiovascular capabilities that represent genuine additional clinical value, capabilities that were never even part of the NMN conversation.